So, welcome to webinar 3 in the IMPACTUS Skills Online Sales Academy program for August 2025. This is entitled Pick a Lane and Smash the Competition. And it's really about the difference between being a generalist and a specialist service provider, sales organization, manufacturer, distributor, or whatever it might be. So, I'm going to talk about the context, which we always start with on one of the webinars, just to get the background as to why this might be of relevance and interest and why it's an important subject as part of the sales cycle that we decided to cover in the webinar program. So the first thing to think about is why picking a lane is really important, particularly in 2025, where you've got a very different customer base to perhaps what you had 4 or 5 years ago, and certainly in the pre-COVID environment. Lots of businesses are now what you might call multi-product or multi-service. They service and sell to a wide range of customers, and they also service and sell to a wide range of sectors. So essentially, they've got a fairly broad offering to a fairly broad church, if you like, in terms of prospects and customers. They might position themselves as one of my most hated phrases, a one-stop shop. There's something about it to suggest it's just a little bit too cliched for me, really, but I wouldn't use the phrase myself, but the phrase is often used by people who are a one-stop shop. Come to us for everything. With a go-to supplier, please talk to us. And, whilst that might be relevant, the end game is, as we said in one of the earlier webinars, your customers and prospects are a little bit more savvy these days, a little bit more expectant. They've got a little bit more kind of awareness of what's out there and who they might want to deal with. They're already 2 or 3 steps down their decision-making process, which is a lot further than they were before. So they're not necessarily looking for the multi-product, multi-service, wide range of sectors that you service. They actually might be looking for specialists, people who are of value because they know exactly what they're doing in an exact situation that's exactly the requirements of that particular prospect or customer. And they'll likely have respect for that genuine expert over and above a generalist. And I'll give you an example. If you have a bad knee and you go to your general practitioner, your GP will tell you that you've got a bad knee, and you'll say, thanks for that, I sort of knew that already. That was the problem that I brought to you. But they will refer you to a specialist who will fix the knee as an orthopedic specialist, and you value the orthopedic specialist much more than you do the person who introduced you to somebody else who could actually fix it, the generalist, as it were. And being a specialist, particularly going forward, will always outdo someone who is that kind of one-stop shop, go-to supplier for everything, multi-product, multi-service provider. And I'll demonstrate that throughout the webinar with a series of case studies of clients and businesses that I've worked with where they've chosen a particular lane, in some cases maybe 2, and they have absolutely taken ownership of that lane and cut through the noise and cut through the distractions and made a real fist of it when it comes to establishing commercial value, establishing repeat business, and growing their customer base. So that's the context of why we're doing what we're doing. And it's backed up by some recent research, one of which is, I'll say when I get to it, slightly suspect, but we'll see when you see it, okay? So 90% of potential customers and prospects don't respond to a cold call ever. Now, I never use the word cold calling anyway. I think cold calling died about 25 years ago with the advent of the internet, and it certainly died with the advent of LinkedIn and Google and all of the research tools available to us. It's very lazy to just pick up a phone and ring and see what happens. We're going to cover that in webinar 4. But Content Marketing Institute said that people don't respond to a first call, as I would call it, ever. So there's a challenge. Second one is between 70 and 90% of customers' buying journey is done by the customers themselves, according to the Future Gartner Group. This next one's the one that I think is quite suspicious. 70% of business-to-business customers turn to social media to learn more about their supply chain, and 78% are willing to buy after having a positive social media experience, said a social media company. So I'm a little bit suspicious about that, but ultimately the numbers are there saying that, people are looking to see who their supply chain could be and what that supply chain is doing in terms of that social media sort of positioning and expertise. Almost 75% of business-to-business buyers now say it's more convenient to buy from a website than buy from a salesperson, and 93% say they prefer to buy online rather than from a salesperson once they've decided what to buy. So they still do need that expertise. They still do need that specialism. Unfortunately, like many of us, what you'll do is you'll do your research with a person. You'll use their knowledge and expertise and potentially buy from another organization online because it's cheaper and you've had your specification validated by an expert. The reality of that is that's a very different thing to look at in a further workshop and a webinar down the line in terms of how do you maintain control of those scenarios where you definitely feel that you're just being pumped for information. And the last one, more than 75% of both customers and sales professionals say they now prefer digital self-service and remote human interaction over face-to-face interaction. Now, that's from a very respected source in McKinsey. It's a disgrace that sales professionals would also say that they prefer, when they're buying, a digital self-service or remote human interaction. Because what they're saying is, we don't want to get involved with people who are like us. Now, as I say, that's a disgrace. But the reality of that is that whole sort of set of stats and background information just says it's getting harder to be effective at sales. It's getting harder to be positioned as someone who is of value, and the customers feel like more often than not they know what they're doing, even if they might not know what they're doing exactly. They come to you a bit further down the line. So we've got to address that in terms of how we become front and center, if you like, and of relevance and value to them going forward. So the reality is it's the difference of positioning between a generalist, the jack of all trades, the one-stop shop, we've got a whole range of products, and a specialist who sits there and absolutely nails a particular product, service, expertise area, or whatever it might be. And whilst you might work for a generalist business, and we'll take an IT consultancy as an example, they may provide software, hardware, IT security. They might provide AI support. They might provide all sorts of other services as a generalist. The individuals within that organization need to be better at positioning themselves as specialists. I specialize in AI software. I specialize in firewall security. I specialize in cyber security. I specialize in hardware or whatever it might be within the framework of an organization that has other specialists as well. And once you've got that idea of being a specialist, what you do then is it's about the perception that even if you are doing other things with other customers and other prospects, you talk in the terms of being a specialist. So it's about perception and reality. And you can still be both, but not in the eyes of a potential prospect or a potential customer. You need to up your game to be more seen as the laser beam rather than the machine gun. Then you grab the opportunity by the throat and then you take that forward. So how do we do that? I call this the Oasis moment, the what's the story, in terms of understanding how do you become a specialist and in what? What do you decide that you want to be your area of expertise or perceived area of expertise? And it comes through from research, really. What do you want to be known for? What are you really good at? Because if you're really good at something, the chances are you want to do more of that. What are you really good at? And we'll talk about options and opportunities for that shortly. What makes you interesting? Have you got a backstory that says this is why you are what you are? So we'll take Michael from Play Scheme, who has been on all of these webinars so far, and he's down for the program. He's selling Play Scheme solutions into all sorts of sectors, but certainly education's a high priority for them. But Michael comes from a teaching background. Why isn't that absolutely relevant to be number one front and center of his DNA when he's talking to educators and schools and trusts and boards and all that kind of thing about, his knowledge of what makes a useful Play Scheme solution. So again, think about that as an option. And then the last thing you want to think about is, what are the people that you're targeting, talking about? What's the bandwagons at the moment that you are jumping on? So it could be anything from in IT, as I say, we mentioned before about Marks and Spencer's getting cyber attacked and the impact that had. So cybersecurity is a big boardroom conversation. Other big boardroom conversations around things like one of my clients is an e-learning company, and the biggest challenge that companies are having at the moment is in attracting, retaining, and developing their staff because expectations are different these days in terms of flexible working and all sorts of extra benefits and bonuses and working from home and all that kind of thing. And it's hard for some of their big customers, their big clients, to attract and retain and develop their staff. And the churn is too great, and therefore the investment is significant. So they're coming up with solutions that look at how do you use digital learning as a key to a pathway to develop your team, to reward them in terms of their future career prospects, as an example, because they know what their potential customers' challenges are. So that's the starting point in terms of understanding kind of the backstory and what might happen. And I'm going to share with you a number of kind of ways to leverage it. But I'd ask you to ask yourself the question, what are you doing around understanding the conversations that your customers are having, your prospects are having? What are you doing to continue doing the stuff you're really good at the exclusion of things that are a distraction anyway? Potentially, you're much better off getting 10 really good sales of something that you're good at than trying to get 10 sales across the board of all sorts of stuff, because you might not be successful in the other all sorts of stuff if you're not particularly interested in, knowledgeable in, capable of, whatever it might be. So sometimes being the expert and the specialist gives you some shortcuts to success, shall we say. So some specialist themes, and these are just ideas, things that you could choose, one of the lanes you could choose, or a couple of the lanes you could choose. And they're just here on the basis of, I've got case studies that cover some of these, and I've got conversations to be had with some of you separately if you want to, about, well, what should we specialize in? What should we look at? And when we had the workshop live, we had ADC on, who are all about kind of the automated doors and entrance doors, etc. They do the glass swoosh doors, for example, on retail and sort of shopping malls and all that kind of thing. But they do a whole range of other doors as well. So, they'll do the industrial doors, they'll do internal doors, they'll do automated toilet doors and all sorts of stuff. And it's very hard for them to get the head around being a specialist. So innovation might not be something for them, but I'll come to something that I think is in their DNA later on, because there's always something that you can think about being the DNA of your business. So innovation might be one. You might be heavily involved in sustainability and environmental issues around the circular economy and reusing and recycling materials. And that might be something that's important to your customer base, and therefore it's important to you. And I'll explain a case study on that shortly. You might be all about sharing information, sharing knowledge. What I do with my business, it's training, it's consultancy, it's advisory. I'm quite happy to give away content within reason. I'm not going to give away the crown jewels, but I'm going to give away hints and tips on things that people then can see that I am knowledgeable in a particular area, in this case being sales. And they see that and they choose to think about me when it comes to, we might have a requirement, because I'm the one who shared this knowledge and shared this information and demonstrated that credibility in that field. So don't worry about giving away snippets of information, as long as they prove your knowledge rather than giving away your complete and utter credibility and credentials, shall we say. You might actually be a specialist in customer excellence and customer obsession. This is what I said to the team at ADC. I know that they've invested a lot of time and effort and energy in putting the customer at the heart of what they do. That might well there turn out to be their kind of lane that they choose. But if they choose that lane, they've got to make sure that they're choosing it and telling everybody at every opportunity that they stand for customer excellence, customer obsession, improving performance on a regular basis at all costs, at all times, thinking about putting the customer at the heart of the experience of working with them, buying from them, servicing the requirements, etc., etc. So you can choose customer excellence and you can excel in that lane because other people are just seeing it as oh yeah, we're very good with customers as well, as a throwaway kind of conversation piece. You might be specialist manufacturing. You might specialize in AI and technology development. So we talked about that with the team from Complete IT. AI is becoming a big conversation piece, and the Microsoft, I can't remember what the software is called now, which is the one that people are trialing, using, having a look at, but trying to understand. Well, if Complete IT can take ownership of that space and become the go-to people, then imagine the scale of opportunity that creates when people are looking to implement AI, look at software development. I'll need some hardware upgrades because I haven't got enough processing power. I might as well go to Complete IT because they know what they're talking about. So examples of that. Corporate social responsibility, you might be all about giving back to the community. You might be all about making sure that you are, seen as charitable and focused and supporting the environment in which you work and the area in which you work. You might be talking about financial impact, return on investment. You might be sharing the fact that you're really successful and you're growing, because a lot of people like to be associated with success. So don't be frightened of telling people that you're doing really well. Don't be frightened of telling people you've had some success. Don't be frightened of sharing case studies that demonstrate how good you are, because that could be a lane that you choose by keeping telling people, keep coming to us, we're brilliant, keep coming to us, we're growing, keep coming to us, we're very successful, keep coming to us, we've got customers and clients coming out of our ears. And that's about case studies, it's about vertical marketing into a particular sector, all those kind of things that you want to think about. You might be the go-to place to make sure that organizations and businesses meet their legislation compliance requirements. And there were some changes in the automated door industry that ADC mentioned, where there's different compliance and legislation to meet now. If you've got automatic doors on public buildings, for example, and if ADC take ownership of that space, people are going to come to them for the advice and support. What do I need to do? What's missing? How does it work? How should it work? Oh, by the way, while you're on, you guys seem to know what you're talking about, because you're experts in automation and automatic doors, and you seem really switched on to the customer experience. Why don't we work together on that basis? So again, you might pick two lanes in that case, but you're focusing on that expertise, that specialism, because the options are almost endless to become that person or business of interest, but not a generalist person or business of interest, a specialist area. So I'm going to share with you 7 case studies fairly quickly, but I'm going to share with you the first case study is a company that chose innovation as its clear pathway to differentiate itself from the competition. Okay. This is one of my clients with the world's most boring logo. I keep telling them that. It's a company called PDM, and they are based in Thirsk in North Yorkshire. They are a product design for manufacture. Essentially, they're a design studio. They design products. And historically, they've designed products across the range. Probably 60% of their business was medical, med tech, medical devices, that kind of thing. But they've also done automotive, toys, industrial, that kind of stuff. They were a generalist design studio and doing quite well, but we're never going to be massive when you look at the number of staff and the growth, etc. And the reason they weren't going to be massive is because within 30 miles of Thirsk, there are probably 30 other design studios all fighting for a finite amount of business. So a few years ago, sat down and we decided that what's important to their customer base isn't just product design. They get that. They understand that. What's important to them is innovation. So what they decided to do was they decided to create this portal called From the Studio, Stories from the World of Product Design. And on that portal, which looks like this, they've created and curated a library of resources that are all about innovation. So the bright cerise pink ones, and this is just a snapshot, there's dozens on there. The bright cerise pink ones are all podcasts talking to people about innovation in medical tech design, innovation in finance, innovation in funding, innovation in the NHS, innovation in soft robotics, etc. Really interesting to their target audience. The second line across is what they would call white papers, and we talked about this on webinar 2, content that can be repurposed, reused, cut, shared, repurposed into all sorts of other content. But these are the white paper raw elements of a guide to working with a high growth startup, a guide to help manufacturers bring their ideas to market, and a guide to working with universities. If you are an ideas business, how do universities support and help those ideas? All very different, but all based around innovation. And then the ones at the bottom are just, interesting articles. There's a phrase in their world called Industry 4.0. So they've got an article on that with interviews and case studies about getting to grips with it, for example. So what they've done is they've become an innovation studio, not a product design studio. They still do product design. Of course, they do lots of it, but they do more of it now than they've ever done before. On the back of being an innovation hub, an innovation studio, they chose innovation and they really took ownership of it with this kind of approach, and it's made a massive difference. So where can you innovate? Innovation, people think about product design. It's not. Innovation covers a whole range of things. So you might say that we're quite innovative in how we deliver our service. We're quite innovative in how we manage our sales processes. We're quite innovative in how we engage our stakeholders or meet our sustainability goals. Innovation, if you want to take ownership of it, you have to take ownership of an element or elements to demonstrate that you are absolutely innovative in some way, shape or form. And if you are, it's a great place to be in 2025 because businesses really value innovation. So again, the options are almost endless on that basis, and it can be any area of business where you innovate. And it might be that you say, so, okay, we're innovating in how we communicate with our customers, and we'd like to tell you about that, but we'd like to tell you about it a lot. We'd like to share that on a regular basis with you. That's the lane we've chosen. The next case study is about expertise. It's setting yourself up to be an expert. Now, this is an example of my business at the turn of the COVID situation, and that there is when we launched IMPACTUS Online. And you read it from the inside out, and we were creating accessible, inspiring content, expertly hosted and delivered. And you might say that it's questionable whether it's expertly hosted and delivered, but that's entirely down to you. It's all subjective. But at the time of COVID, I wasn't doing anything online whatsoever. Everything I did was classroom, face-to-face, coaching, workshops, training, everything face-to-face. Never done online stuff before, and became an online provider. And we became an expert in online delivery. So we created content, which is the middle green box. We created content, we delivered content, we inspired audiences, we evaluated how that was going, and we continued to evolve and develop our offering and how we delivered accessible, inspiring content, expertly hosted and delivered. If your eyes are drawn to the top and the bottom, we've got a sales academy, which is this, with facilitated workshops if we're doing face-to-face, or webinars if we're doing them over online delivery. And we've got coaching programs in the sales academy as well. But we also work with emerging talented leaders and established leaders in an academy environment. So what we've done is we've created this kind of portal which says if you are based outside of the geographical accessibility that you would normally want to work with a training provider, let's look at online delivery. And only last week I was doing an online workshop, a half-a-day workshop with a client, and I had staff from South Africa, East Coast America, EMEA, Middle East, and UK, all on the webinar, all expertly delivered, and they were delighted with it. They were never going to get all those people into a room, but they came to me because they knew I'd been promoting the fact that I can do online, expertly hosted and delivered content. The next one's my favourite when it looks at being both a generalist and a specialist, because sometimes you have to be both. And the company in question is a company called Durham Lifting, who are a client of mine, long-standing client of mine. And Durham Lifting have been going 27 years. And in 27 years, they've been involved in anything to do with lifting equipment for oil and gas, offshore construction. If it involves cranes that have got shackles, hooks, chains, wires, anything that lifts heavy stuff, beams, etc., they've sold and hired it and manufactured it for 27 years. And within that they've done, they had a range of products that they've been doing for 27 years. But 4 years ago, they took those products out of their core product range and rebranded them as a product in their own right called Multisec Engineered Lifting Systems. These are just 4 of the products under Multisec Engineered Lifting Systems. Now, engineered lifting systems are something specialist for the lifting industry. So Durham Lifting is still doing what they've always done, chains, hooks, shackles, etc. but they've also got now this multi-sec engineered lifting system that has grown significantly in its own right. Ironically, they've been selling and hiring these for 27 years, but they painted them pink in 4 years ago, and they're on building sites and construction sites and offshore, and the bright cerise pink. And they became a brand and a product in their own right. They've got their own website, they've got their own branding, they've got their own sales team. And multi-sec engineered lifting systems, I think, will outgrow Durham Lifting as a business by 2030. And all they did was take one element of their product range and say, we're going to put a ring fence around that. We're going to talk about it separately, and we're going to promote the living daylights out of it. We become a specialist in engineered lifting systems, whilst also being a generalist over here on other things that you might need as well. Brilliant, brilliant piece of initiative by Durham Lifting. The next one, can you focus on customer excellence? Of course you can. And if you do, the world is your oyster. And I'll give you an example of this. A company called Verplas, one of my clients, they manufacture and distribute all the plastic piping for air conditioning and anything to do with airflow, etc. And they do lots of it. And they got a new managing director in 2019, just before COVID, a guy called Darren Gittins, lovely chap, lovely fella. And Darren took the business over, and in his first few weeks, he had a heart attack, which wasn't great for Darren, and he didn't mind sharing the story. So he started the job, new business, new MD of an established business, sorry, and had a heart attack, and then recovered fully, had the whole thing done, sorted, etc. And then COVID kicked in, so it wasn't the greatest start to his career as an MD of this particular business. And I said to him, probably September, October 2020. How's it going at Verplas? You've been in a year. You haven't really been in a year. You've been in and out for a year. You got COVID, etc. How's it going? And he said, it's an absolute basket case. That was his description of his own business. And I said, why? He said, nobody cares. He said, the customer service is terrible. The ownership of responsibility is terrible. We don't have standards that we adhere to. He said, we've got, everything from taking the wrong orders to picking and packing the wrong stuff to sending things out that are broken, incomplete orders, not answering the phones, just a complete shower. He said, you know what? I don't mind. He said, I don't mind starting there because I'm going to take us on a journey to be an investor in customers, which is an established route in terms of the UK. Now, investing in customer is a starting point which says, what's your thing called net score promoter? In other words, we'll do a survey. What do your customers think of you? They started off on -50 or -52, which is basically saying you are the worst business we've ever dealt with as a company at Verplas. And Darren went, okay, that's good. We know where we're starting from. And over the last 5 years, they've gone from bronze to silver to gold standard investors in customers by putting the customer at the heart of every decision they make to improve process, reduce waste, shorten the process of sales, get in touch with their customers, follow them up, etc. But more importantly, they've told everyone. If you think about Verplas in their industry, what they talk about is customer, 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 customer. What they've also said, they've gone back to previous customers and said, we used to be a basket case. We know that's why you left us. We know that you weren't impressed with us. But look what we're doing. Give us another chance. Give us another go. And what they've done is they've drawn back loads of former customers with the confidence that everything that they do now is exceptional. And it's exceptional to the extent that they won a National Gold Standard Award in London last year for the journey that they've been on. And they tell everybody, and their growth has been significant. It's purely based on customer obsession and customer excellence. That's the lane that they've taken ownership of. Knowledge transfer is another one we talked previously about on LinkedIn. Are you the person who's going to share posts, share content, share information, create events, that kind of stuff? You want to be known potentially for giving away nuggets of information, being an expert, building up your kind of credibility. Then knowledge transfer is the way to go. And lots of my clients use knowledge transfer through events, posting, content, etc., to position themselves ahead of the competition, not by blaming the competition or slagging the competition off, but simply by being there and being consistent and by being authentic in their positioning pieces. Next one, a couple more to go. Sustainability. I'm going back to PDM because PDM, when they were talking about innovation and becoming an innovation hub, They also realised that in medtech, and now they only position themselves as a medtech supporting business. So they do innovation, sustainability in medtech. They don't do industrial design. They don't design toys. They don't design for the automotive industry anymore. Purely medtech, which is a fast-growing, big enough sector anyway. Now, sustainability was a massive issue, and it came about because of this thing here. This is a lady called Maria Koicek. And Maria Koicek is an installation artist. And Maria had a major operation a number of years ago, about 4 years ago, I think. And as it says there, she discovered that 60% of the surgery materials used for the operation are disposable. So the stainless steel scissors that were flown in from Japan are used for one cut before they end up in the bin. And Maria Koicek was absolutely mortified that she had added to the kind of mountain of waste in medtech just by being operated on. So the picture on the bottom right is her in the middle of all of the single-use, non-recyclable materials that we used on her in an operation. There's loads and loads of stuff out there about the wrong type of plastics, non-reusable, non-recyclable, etc. But the NHS picked this up and said, we need to be better and medtech needs to be better. So what happened was PDM went out and they recruited a global known leader in sustainability. And what they've done then is they've taken how product development goes around in medtech. Instead of taking raw materials, making the product and then getting rid of it, they now talk about we'll make them, we'll use them, we'll recycle as much as we can. It's called the circular economy to meet targets in the NHS. And all these things that they've been able to do here are all down to the fact that they've been able to advise and support businesses on how to meet NHS sustainability targets. But they are also getting loads of design work on the back of it because people say, well, I need to redesign my product using different materials. How do I do that? Where do I start? They've got some massively impressive case studies and testimonials from some brilliantly big businesses, and they are growing their business around sustainability as well as innovation in a market that's growing because of the NHS are driving that compliance. What a lane to pick alongside innovation. That's what they do all day, every day, innovation, sustainability. My last one is about shouting from the rooftops when you're good. Shout from the rooftops when you're being successful. You know why? Particularly when you've got limited customers, potentially. People like to work with successful businesses. So when someone says, how's business? The answer's always brilliant, really good. We've worked really, we've got loads coming out of our ears, never been busier. You never say, oh, it's a bit quiet, really. If it's a bit quiet and your competition are busy, I might be tempted to go to your competition. I might wait a little bit longer for them, but they're busy for a reason. So this is about promoting your growth and your success as a lane and being consistent in terms of how you do that. So I'll give you an example. This is about being ahead of the competition, getting through the line, and this is a franchise business, okay? So if you don't know anything about the franchise sector, it's a limited market. Lots of people wake up on a morning and say, I want to be my own boss. But I want to be my own boss, but I don't want to set my own business up. I'll go for a franchise because I get everything wrapped around it, and it's a sort of like an easier option than being a full 100% entrepreneur. I can be an entrepreneur, but with support. So franchises are very, very sort of appealing to certain people. But there's a finite amount of people out there, and at the franchise show every year, everyone's there. McDonald's, Costa, Pronto-Print, massive big businesses, and then the small ones as well. And there's a small company called the Cat Butler. Yes, it's a thing. The Cat Butler is basically, as it says there, a premier cat sitting service. So when you go on holiday and you've got cats, instead of putting them in the cat room, which costs you 300 quid, the Cat Butler comes and looks after you. They put your lights on, the security, they make sure your house is okay, but they feed the cat, they play with the cat, they make sure the cat's happy at home. And if you're a cat lover and you've got one or two cats at home, you can go on holiday knowing your cats are happy. Apparently, it's pretty impressive. Now, what I'd say to you is, not for me really particularly, but the Cat Butler is a very, very successful franchise. 4 years ago, they had 2 franchises. They are opening 20 a year. And they're opening 20 a year because every time you see the Cat Butler on any social media, any channels whatsoever, they're saying, we're opening 20 a year. We are the fastest growing franchise, small franchise in the UK. Come and join a successful team. What's not to like about that? That's their message. That's what they learned. That's what they own. That's the lane they've taken. So once you decide on your lane, you've got to make sure that you are clear and concise, but you're everywhere. And we're going to talk about in the pitching workshop, which is workshop for webinar 5, how do we get that language right once you've chosen a lane? It's almost like we thought about this in terms of how it all fits together, really. But let's see. Let's see if we're as clever as we think we are when we get to that. Okay. Now, a very common problem or error that's easy to rectify is you want your message, your lane, your expertise, your positioning to resonate as far as possible. But you might have data in all sorts of different places and different formats and different areas. So I'll give you an example. I've got 10,000 connections just short on LinkedIn. I've got a CRM with 7,000 contacts on there. So there's always a disconnect already, isn't there? So if I replicated my CRM into LinkedIn, I guarantee there's people in my CRM that I've not connected to on LinkedIn. But there's also lots of people on LinkedIn that are not in my CRM. And there's reasons for that, because I don't put everybody in until there's a conversation we had, for example, and that kind of stuff. But what I'm trying to say to you is, if your data is held in different systems and different places by different people, picking a lane as the starting point, what you want to do is make sure that lane is mentioned everywhere. So if you're doing a post on LinkedIn, think about replicating that post as an e-shot. If you're doing an e-shot, think about replicating that as a LinkedIn post or social media post. Think about discussing it with existing customers in review meetings, for example. So once you've picked a lane, make sure that you don't miss the opportunity to tell as many people as often as possible, as consistently as possible, what that lane or what those lanes are. Because I promise you now, commercially, financially, and results wise, it is massive in terms of the difference it can make to you. So very briefly, because we touched on this in workshop webinar 2, good about create noise, push, pull sales we talked about. So choose your platforms, choose the activity, create some specialist subject content. So if you choose innovation, start thinking about content that looks like innovation. Post that content, put it in the groups that you should be joining. Is there any innovation groups? Are there any medtech groups? Are there any IT groups talking about AI? Are there any things talking about education and, play areas and all that kind of thing? There's many places possible. Send some personal messages to people. So, for example, when I created this online academy for August and I started putting it together in June, I pulled the dates together, pulled the content together and posted about it on LinkedIn. But I also then went through as many people in my network who are sales managers, sales directors, or sales professionals and sent them a personal message that said, I've just posted this, I want to make sure you've seen it. I've just posted this, I want to make sure you've seen it. But at the same time, I was also going through my CRM with e-shots and sending them to people saying, we're doing this in August. I think you might be interested. I think you're doing it, you might be interested. So I'm sending personal messages linked back to information. Track the engagement, who's opening, who's commenting, who's thinking. So I had people in July who were liking the posts about the online academy. All I did was say to them, thanks for liking the post. Are we going to see you on the academy? Thanks for liking the post. Which ones are resonating with you? And I've got bookings as a result of tracking that engagement. Acknowledge it, appreciate it. Thanks for your help. Thanks for acknowledging it, and take some action with those interested parties. Wherever possible, update your CRM. Create a warm list for a particular activity that you're looking at and re-engage them away from social media and away from anything else. Pick up the phone, talk to them, ask them what they're up to, ask them, what level of interest they've got, how they can work with you, and repeat that specialist subject content on an ongoing basis. Repeat the message, the golden thread, the lane you've picked or the lanes that you've picked. So I guarantee that Durham Lifting talk about multisec all the time, and have been doing so for 4 years. And funny enough, multisec is growing significantly as a result of that. It was a product that was built in to what they've been doing for 27 years and lost in the melee of everything else that they did. I'm not saying you paint things pink, but painting something pink in construction, oil and gas and offshore isn't a bad idea of getting noticed, shall we say. It's aligning sales, marketing and the customer experience. Okay. Going to finish with some do's and don'ts in terms of getting this right. Decide your specialism and embrace it fully. Create a content calendar that's going to support that specialism and how you promote that, and promote that specialism on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be every day, but every time I see your business, I want to see it associated with the word that you've chosen or the phrase that you've chosen: innovation, customer experience, um, specialist engineering, specialist manufacturing, AI, whatever it might be. Make sure you don't miss the opportunity to keep hammering home that specialism. Maintain that momentum. Identify potentially interested people who might be relevant to you and reach out to them in a professional way. And embrace new and existing contacts equally, because new contacts have not seen your backtrack, your back history, your back catalogue. So embrace them as fresh and new and interesting and relevant and valid, and give them a reason to connect, and be prepared to evolve your offering like PDM did. They were purely going down the innovation route till they saw sustainability was alongside that, and then they evolved into innovation sustainability. Now they talk about sustainable innovation, funnily enough. Things not to do. Don't be a LinkedIn prick, basically. What I mean by that is don't connect with someone and then send them a pitch within 2 minutes. It's the worst thing you can do in the world. It's really annoying. Don't expect instant success on social media, but don't give up on your plan. There is a phrase that says people are watching, and when they're ready, they'll come to you. And they'll come to you because they've seen what you're about. They've seen your expertise. They've seen your specialism. If you give up, they won't keep seeing it. So don't replace that laser beam with a machine gun. Mass engagement, not really great. Targeted activity to the right people, the right message, looking at what they're interested in, what their bandwagons are, and aligning yourself with it is exceptionally, exceptionally effective. Don't just follow what others are doing. Don't take crap advice from people. There's always someone down the pub whose mate Billy knows how to do things. You know what? What's Billy doing in life? Okay, just be careful of the Billies of this world. Once you've got your message, once you've got your plan, once you've got your activity, stick to it. Don't be put off. But I've put this one here just as a bit of fun, really. Don't be too authentic. There's a guy on LinkedIn, and a while ago, about a year ago, he was posting, and he's posting every day. And he posted every day. He said, I'm a business advisor and I want to help advise your business. But he said, I'm going to share with you, warts and all, the mistakes I've made as a business owner. I thought, okay, bit authentic. He posted one on day one, and another one on day two, and day three, and day four. He got to day 12. He was posting every day about how shit he was. I used to be shit. I used to make shit decisions. I used to be like the worst person ever. So I'm now aware of all of that, and I'd like to work with you. Like, really? And I rang him and I said to him, who's advising you? And he said, a LinkedIn advisor's told me to be authentic. And I said, well, I'm telling you as a sales professional now, you are absolutely damaging yourself beyond repair by telling people that you used to be shit, because they won't get past the fact that you used to be shit. So stop being authentic. And he stopped taking them down. And by the way, the videos looked like hostage videos as well, to be fair. They weren't great. So he didn't really do himself any favors on that one. But don't lose heart. It takes time to build that trust, that momentum. Okay. So the final thing is, what's your story? What lane or lanes do you want to pick? Because if you pick one or pick two and you absolutely own it, you will be miles better than you are by being a generalist. We do everything. We sell everything to everyone in all these sectors. Be an expert. Be a lane picker. Go for it. Okay. So, if there's any questions, feel free to send them in, email me, pick it up at another future webinar. But I'm happy to answer any questions you might have on that. I'd like you to take at least one action point from every webinar: what you're going to do, what you're going to stop doing, what you're going to start doing, what you're going to improve in terms of what you do now. That was webinar 3, pick a lane and smash the competition. Webinar 4 is maximizing every inbound and outbound phone call. And what I will say about that one is, I started my self-employed professional career doing telesales for people who couldn't do it. I am one of life's strange people. I absolutely love a phone call, inbound or outbound. I'm going to share with you some of my stuff that gives you the insights into making it interesting, successful, and hopefully a bit of fun. There's 8 webinars. They're all there. If anybody wants to pick up the ones that they've missed, please do so. You can do that on the videos at £25 a go, or you can have all the webinars at the end for £150, or you get the full program, come on and do the live sessions with me, which I love to see and love to do. My contact details are there, including a QR code if you're not connected with me on LinkedIn. Other than that, I'd like to say thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and hopefully that's given you some insights into picking a lane. We'll see you on a future webinar very soon.